Good afternoon, friends. We're so happy you're here. On behalf of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Las Vegas, we welcome you to this special celebration of the Bicentenary of the birth of the Bab. Today, we are among thousands of communities around the world celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Bab's birth. Along with Baha'u'llah, the Bab is the first of the two manifestations of the Baha'i faith. We're gratified to be collaborating once again with the talented Clark High School theater, orchestra, music students, and teachers in today's ambitious production. We extend our deep felt thanks and admiration to each of the musicians, actors, singers, and technicians, and to their teachers, Dr. Chuck Cushionary, Mr. Eric Main, Miss Jeanette Pennington, and Mrs. Suzanne Stone, who have brought today's production to life. Our program will feature several people and events in the Bab's short life, which we hope will give you a sense of the beauty, mystery, power, tragedy, and triumph of the Bab's revelation and the reason we celebrate his birth today. Out of reverence for him, no actor will portray the Bab on stage. Afterwards, we invite you to join us for refreshments in the courtyard. And now, we present the life of the Bab.
Near the time of the Bab's birth in 1819 in Shiraz, Iran, scholars who studied holy books and people around the world were anticipating the return of the Promised One. There was religious and material revolutionary fervor everywhere. In the West, a great material revolution was taking place, with railroads being built, factories springing up, and inventions changing the lives of millions. People of many Christian denominations were scouring the Bible for clues of the return of Christ. Many left their homes and sold their belongings in order to be prepared. In Persia, the expectation was the same. Sunni Muslims were also looking for the return of Jesus and the Mahdi, while Shiite Muslims were looking for the 12th Imam. A new creative spirit had been released in the world. The former glory of all religions was fading. It was then that the Bab arose in fulfillment of the prophecies of prior religions. As has always been the case, those who are the followers of the older religion, primarily clerics who feared displacement and loss of power, were the ones who persecuted the herald of the new religion. And so, it was the clerics in Persia who were determined to erase the Bab's influence. to do whatever it took to stop him. His story began with his birth on October 20th, 1819. It ended, they thought, on that day in Tabriz.
Have you heard? Have you heard? Have you heard? This one's coming. Have you heard? Have you heard? Have you?
I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked, at whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten. Verily, I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of both the East and the West to obey my word and to pledge allegiance to my person.
The Baha'i era was born in 1844 when a young man in Shiraz, Iran named Ali Muhammad declared that he was none other than the Promised One. He became known as the Bab. In the first and mightiest of the books revealed by the Bab, he proclaims his station.
I am the mystic fame which the hand of omnipotence hath reared. I am the lamp which the finger of God has lit within its niche and caused to shine with deathless splendor. I am the flame of that supernal light that glowed upon Sinai in the gladsome spot and lay concealed in the midst of the burning bush.
Invested with sovereign power, the Bab held a dual station, that of a manifestation of God and also of a precursor to an even mightier revelation. The knowledge revealed by the Bab transcended that of all previous prophets combined. In summoning the people to the Word of God, the Bab reminded them of their quest for their beloved.
By the righteousness of God, it behooves in this day the peoples and nations of both the East and the West to hasten to this threshold, and here seek to attain the reviving grace of the merciful. Whoso hesitates will indeed be a grievous loss. Do not the peoples of the earth testify that the fundamental purpose of their creation is the knowledge and adoration of God? It behooves them to arise and seek with determination and constancy their promised beloved.
I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you hail for 1,000 years invoked. At his mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten. Verily I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of both the East and the West to obey my word and to pledge allegiance to my person. I am the promised one.
knew him well. He was my son. He was born in October 1819 in the city of Shiraz, in Persia. From the time he was a little baby, I knew there was something very different about him. As a child, he was extremely dignified and serene. My husband died when the Bab was very young, and my brother became his guardian. When it came time for him to go to school, my brother took him. But the teacher brought him back the following day, saying, "There is nothing that I can teach this gifted child." He said, "He stands in no need of teachers such as I." But my brother was determined that the Bab should continue to attend school, and so he did. But as time went on, the schoolmaster said that in his relationship to the Bab, he felt like it was him who was being instructed. My son's intelligence was not the only characteristics that made him stand out. The character of his devotion to God was unique. The Bab spent many hours in prayers and was often late for school because, as he said, he had been in his grandfather's house. You know, we were direct descendants of Prophet Muhammad. And this is the term that we use for prayers often. Sometimes his teacher would tell him that a 10-year-old boy does not need to pray so much. The Bab would say, "I wish to be like my grandfather." When Bab was 22, there was something different about his behavior. He was always extremely courteous and mild, but there seemed to be a glorious surrounding him. Other people said that they noticed that there is something very different about him too. The religious students started to come to visit him in the evenings. Soon, the heart of the star entered our lives. My son went to pilgrimage, and on his return, the religious authorities summoned him to the mosque, saying, "You must stop your teachings." The Bab told his wife that he was leaving us for our own protection. After he left, we heard of the rumor of his claim to be the promised one. But it was not before the end of my life, that Baha'u'llah, the one that the Bab said he had come to prepare the way for, sent 2 of his followers to tell me about my son's glorious station and mission. Soon, she and I heard of his arrest. But it was not after his death that we learned about his execution. After all these years, I can tell you how hard this is still is. Alas, I was not with him on that day in Tabriz.
Throughout that time, their only solace were these words revealed by the Bab and their faith in God.
the Bob's wife. We were childhood friends. Because we grew next to each other as children, the Bob would often come and visit with his family. One night, when he was about 17 years old, while he was away in another town, I had a vivid dream. I dreamt I saw him standing in a field of beautiful flowers. He was facing towards Mecca in an attitude of prayer, and he was wearing a beautiful coat embroidered in gold thread with verses from the Quran. His face was raging. When I told this dream to his mother and grandmother, they assured me that it was the Bab's devotion to his prayers that had brought this vision to me. After a while, I had another dream. I dreamt that Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, had come to ask for my hand in marriage to her son, Imam Hussein. When I told this dream to my mother, she told me that it signified good fortune for me. That same day, the Bab's mother and grandmother came to visit my mother. Before they left, the Bab's mother kissed me on my forehead. My mother told me that this kiss signified that the Bab's mother was asking for my hand in marriage to her son. She said, "You see, the dream you had last night came true." We were married 2 months later in August of 1842. The first few months were the happiest of my life. His kindness towards me was indescribable. Not long after, however, I had another dream. I dreamt that a terrifying lion was standing in the courtyard of our home, and I had my arms around its neck. The lion dragged me twice around the entire courtyard, and once again around half of it. I woke up trembling. When I told this dream to my husband, he said, "You awoke too soon. Your dream foretells that our time together will not last longer than 2.5 years. I was very upset, but his affection and words comforted me and must have prepared me for the adversity that lay ahead. One night, when the house was dark and we were all asleep, the Baba rose from our bed and left our room. At first, I paid no attention to his absence, but after more than an hour, I became concerned. I began looking for him, but he was nowhere to be found. Then, I walked to the western side of the house, looked up at the roof, and saw that the upper room was well lit. And so, with some caution, I went up the steps. There I saw him standing with his hands raised heavenward, chanting a prayer in the most beautiful voice, with tears streaming down his face. And his face was luminous. He was receiving revelation from God. Rays of light emanated from it. Fear seized me, and I stood transfixed. I trembled and could neither enter the room nor leave it. When I was on the point of screaming, he made a motion with his blessed hands telling me to go back. The movement of his hands gave me back my courage, and I returned to my room and to my bed, but sleep was impossible. At sunrise, he went to his mother's room for tea. As soon as I saw him, that same attitude and majesty which I had beheld the night before took shape before me. He raised his face to me, and with great kindness asked me to sit beside him. He gently asked what was troubling me, and I replied, "You are no longer the person I knew in our childhood. We grew up together, and we have been married for 2 years living in this house together, and now I no longer recognize the person in front of me. You have been transformed, and it makes me anxious and uneasy." He smiled and said that although he wished I had not seen him in the condition of the previous night, God had ordained otherwise. He said,
"It was the will of God that you should have seen me in the way you did last night, so that no shadow of doubt should ever cross your mind. And you should know with absolute certitude that I am the manifestation of God, whose advent has been invoked for 1,000 years. This light radiates from my heart and from my being."
As soon as I heard these words, I believed in him, and my heart became calm and assured. From that moment on, I lived only to serve him. As his claim to be the promised one became known, and as more people became attracted to him, greater grew the denial of the priests and the government leaders, and greater grew the fierce opposition. He was arrested one night, and it was said he would be put to death. That same night, however, a cholera epidemic suddenly struck Shiraz, taking a heavy toll of lives. Many fled the city, including the governor. The Bab's life was spared. They say he saved the life of the son of the man who was to put him to death. After that, he was taken to various prisons and then to companies. Before he left our home, he confided in me the secret for his future sufferings and told me the significance of the events that were to come. He gave me a special prayer, revealed and written by himself. He said,
In the hour of your perplexity, recite this prayer when you go to sleep. I, myself, will appear to you and will banish your anxiety.
and I found this to be true. Every time I turned to him in prayer, the light of his guidance illumined my path and solved my problems. Eventually, my greatest happiness came when I recognized the great one that my husband had given his life for, Baha'u'llah. Those brief years with him were so wonderful. My heart was broken when I learned he had been executed. Sadly, I was not with him on that day in Tabriz.
I was the first to believe in the Bab. It was 1844, a time when the whole world was waiting for the promised one. I had been a student of two great teachers in Persia. Their missions had been to prepare as many people as possible for the coming of the promised one, and a new cycle on earth, with a new way of living that had been foretold for thousands of years. After the deaths of my teachers, I fasted and prayed for 40 days to prepare myself to find the promised one. As I set out on my journey, I felt drawn irresistibly to the north, as if by a magnet to this city, the city of Shiraz. Just before sunset, as I approached the gate of the city, I saw a young man whose face was radiant and wearing a green turban, which is a mark of noble lineage. This young man, who was about 25 years old, came towards me with a smile of loving welcome. He embraced me with affection, as though he had been my lifelong friend. He invited me to his house. With such power and majesty, his words penetrated my soul. In his home, he showed me the greatest hospitality. After we had tea, I said a prayer and unburdened my heart, saying, I have striven with all my soul, O my God, and until now have failed to find the promised messenger. I testify that thy word faileth not, and thy promise is sure. Then, with no prompting, he asked me what signs my teachers had told me to look for in my search for the promised one. As I recounted the signs to be found within the promised one, he proclaimed,
Behold, all these signs are manifest in me.
I was stunned. He then spoke of each of the signs separately and conclusively demonstrated that each and all described him. The Bab then took up his pen and, chanting the words as he wrote them, he revealed all of the answers to the questions I had had. Without being asked, he began to reveal a commentary on the Surah of Joseph, which is a verse in the Quran that only the Promised One was said to be able to unravel. It was a mystery I wished to hear explained. It had been hidden in my heart. Not for one moment did he interrupt the flow of verses that streamed from his pen. I sat enraptured by the magic of his voice and the sweeping force of his revelation. When he finished writing, it was 2 hours and 11 minutes after sunset on May 23rd, 1844. I had no further need of proof. Can you imagine how I felt? After this long search, I had found the promised one. He then said to me,
O thou, who art the first to believe in me, verily I say, I am the Bab, the gate of God, and thou art the gate of that gate. 18 souls must in the beginning, spontaneously and of their own accord, accept me and recognize the truth of my revelation. Unwarned and uninvited, each of these must seek independently to find me. We shall appoint unto each of the 18 souls a special mission.
I felt possessed of such courage and power that were the world, all of its peoples and all of its potentates, to rise against me. I would alone and undaunted withstand their onslaught. The universe seemed but a handful of dust within my grasp. He then asked me to go to Tehran. He said I would find a great mystery there, a great source of knowledge. All that he spoke to me that night came true. The 18 souls, whom he called Letters of the Living, discovered him. And he sent us out throughout Persia to teach his cause. The opposition was unbelievable, but the power of our faith was greater. Thousands of people accepted his teachings, and 20,000 people died at the hands of the government and clergy. At a makeshift fort called Fort Tabarsi, I, along with 313 of my companions, tried to defend our faith and our lives. The Shah of Iran sent 6,000 soldiers against us. We held our ground for 9 months, and on February 1st, 1849, I gave my life for the Bab's cause. And so I was not with him on that day in Tabriz.
Tahirih. I was also known as the soulless of the eyes, or the pure one. I was considered very beautiful in this world, but I was interested in a higher beauty, the beauty of the spiritual world. Of the 18 letters of the living of the first disciples of the Bab, I am the only woman. I recognized the Bab in a dream. God's great gift to me was my inner sight. I knew that the Bab's teachings were true and that he and his teachings were from God, but acknowledging that truth came with the price. When I became a follower of the Bab, my husband tried to poison me and divorced me and took my 3 children away from me. The Shah of the Persia desired me for a bride. He said, I like her looks, leave her and let her be. He wanted me for a bride on the condition I denied my faith. I refused him. I was born in a time and place where women were shut up behind veils and walls, like voiceless ghosts, deprived of food, their minds and souls. Some even believed that women didn't even possess souls. It seemed absurd to me that half humanity should be imprisoned like this. I insisted to my father that he provide an education for me, and he recognized my capacity and did this lovingly, despite the culture of the times. I became a scholar. I knew that women were just as intelligent as men in the qualities of mercy, intuition, superior. And so I spent the rest of my short life dedicated to their education. I was renowned for my poetry, which is studied and enjoyed in modern-day Iran. I am regarded as one of the most talented Persian writers. I am subject to many European plays and books. However, what most don't know is that I was a follower of the Bab. Inspired by the Bab's teachings, I taught women in their households. When men were present, I spoke behind a curtain. One day, in front of a group of men, I removed my veil. The shock was so great that one man ended up slitting his own throat. When I removed my veil for all women, for all time. It was a spiritual act as much as a physical one. I am honored to have Abdul Baha say this about me.
The appearance of such a woman as Tahirih is, in any country and any age, a rare phenomenon. But in a country such as Persia, it is a prodigy, nay, almost a miracle. Alike in virtue of her marvelous beauty, her rare intellectual gifts, her fervid eloquence, her fearless devotion, and her glorious martyrdom, she stands forth incomparable and immortal amidst her countrywomen. Had the Baha'i religion no other claim to greatness, this were sufficient, that it produced a heroine like Tahirih.
After I declared my need for the Bab, my life was full of persecution, and I was finally placed under house arrest. I knew I was the day to die. I perfumed and I dressed in a gown of pure white, my wedding dress. Then I fasted and I prayed, and I was taken to the site of my execution. While I was strangled by a drunken soldier and thrown into a well. My final words were, "You can kill me as soon as you like, but you will never stop the emancipation of a woman." I was happy to give my life for the Bab, but I was not there with him on the day at Tabriz.
This is a song about Tahirih, the pure one.
Solace of the eyes. In a land far away, where nightingales warble, a
justice surrounds your passion and vision, courage and wisdom open the gates. There in a dream, standing before her, the face of the Bob, the face of the true one. Oh, angry mob, love can withstand you. Oh, angry mob, love will surround you. Oh, tyrant, the soulless of the eyes. Killed at the hands of a drunken guard. Her silk and white kerchief wrapped round her throat. Saved by her hand for that very moment, and killed by a man refusing atonement. Her soul would take flight from the darkness of the night. Oh, tyrant, beautiful tyrant, hatred abounds, justice surrounds your passion and vision, courage and wisdom opens the gates. Oh, tyrant, beautiful tyrant, hatred abounds, justice surrounds your passion and vision, courage and wisdom opens the gates. And oh, how she rode, defeating her foe, bearing the way, dawn of a new day, and all of mankind would tear back the blinds, unchain your head, and beautify the land. Oh, soulless of the eyes. Oh, soulless of the eyes. Oh, soulless of the eyes.
I was with him. Yes, I was with him. I am Anise. I was living in Tabriz when they brought the Bab there. When I was in my teens, I had heard about the Bab and was so attracted to his teachings that I became his follower. But my stepfather would not allow me to see the Bab or pledge my allegiance to him. However, one day I turned my heart towards him and prayed. These were the words of my prayer. Oh God, you can see my captivity and helplessness, and how eager I am to see your face. Dispel this gloom that oppresses my heart with the light of your radiant face. I cried tears and more tears, and was so overcome with emotion that I seemed to have lost consciousness. Suddenly, I heard a voice. I knew it was the voice of the Bab. He was calling me.
Anis, arise.
I saw the majesty of his face as he appeared before me. He smiled and looked into my eyes. I rushed forward and threw myself at his feet.
Be happy. The hour is approaching when, in this very city of Tabriz, I shall be suspended before the eyes of the multitude, and shall fall a victim to the fire of the enemy. I shall choose no one except you to share with me the cup of martyrdom. Rest assured, this promise which I give you shall be fulfilled.
On July the 8th, I escaped to my stepfather's house and ran barefoot to the center of Tabriz, confident I would find the Bab. The streets were full of people and the commotion was incredible. The whole city was in turmoil. The Bab's death warrant had just been announced and people were trying to get a glimpse of him. He was being escorted by soldiers from the house of the governor to the central square when I found him. I broke through ranks of soldiers and just as in my dream, threw myself at his feet and cried out, "Send me not from thee, O master! Wherever you go, let me follow!" And he said,
Anis, arise, and rest assured, you will be with me. Tomorrow you shall witness what God has decreed.
That night, we were taken to a room at the edge of the central square in Tabriz. There was the Bab, his secretary, and I. I'll never forget the feeling in that room. He was so happy. He knew he'd be executed the next day. And he spoke of how his mission on earth had been accomplished. Despite the opposition of the clergy and the government, no power had succeeded in quenching the flame of faith that his words had set ablaze. The coming of the Baha'u'llah had been his constant theme, and before his death, he addressed the people in these words.
O thou, remnant God, Baha'u'llah, I have sacrificed myself wholly for thee. I have accepted curses for thy sake, and have yearned for naught but martyrdom in the path of thy love.
The Bab and I went to our death before a crowd of 10,000 people in 2 firing squads, each comprised of 750 men. And the events of that day were reported by many who were there. After a mysterious attempt by experienced by gunfire of 750 soldiers failed, a 2nd regiment's bullets shattered our bodies and mingled them that day and forevermore. We lie together on the shrine of the Bab on Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel. I was with him on that day in Tabriz.
the Christian commander of the Armenian regiment that was ordered to execute the Bab. It was just before noon on July 9th in 1850. There was a great commotion that day. A crowd of 10,000 people had come to see me and my 750 men carry out our duty. But I had no ill will against him and was uncomfortable with my orders. So I went to his cell where the Bab was giving instructions to his secretary, and I begged the Bab to forgive me in advance. I said, "If your cause be the cause of truth, then free me from the obligation to shed your blood." The Bab replied to me,
Follow your instructions, and if your intention be sincere, the Almighty is surely able to relieve you of your perplexity.
So I left his cell and gathered my 750 men to prepare for the execution. I'm told by those who witnessed it that after I left, he continued giving his instructions to his secretary when an attendant walked in to take him to be executed.
It's time to go.
He said he wasn't ready yet.
Not until I have told him all that I wish to say can any earthly power silence me. I shall not be deterred from fulfilling to the last word my intention.
Ignoring the Bab's words, the attendant ushered him and his companion, Anis, to the square, where they were brought to a wall and suspended by ropes. And so the execution was to proceed. Regiment 1, ready, fire! Regiment 2, ready, fire! Regiment 3, ready, fire! As soon as the smoke cleared, the crowd saw a scene which their eyes couldn't believe. There, standing before us, was the Bab's companion. But the Bab had vanished, and the ropes that had suspended their bodies were completely cut by bullets, but their bodies have escaped the bullets from 750 guns.
The Bab has gone from our sight.
They finally found him back in his cell, sitting with his secretary. He was continuing his prior conversation. There was an expression of calm on his face, and his body was unmarked by bullets. He looked to the guard and said,
I have finished my conversation. Now you may proceed to fulfill your intention.
But the attendant was too shaken to resume what he already attempted. He refused to continue, left the scene, and resigned his post. I, also in disbelief, after just having pled the Bab to relieve me of his burden, would not fire a second time. So I ordered my soldiers to leave their barracks. I refused my superior's command, and I left. Another commander, who was head of the bodyguard, volunteered, and another regiment was brought in. And in the wall, in the same manner, the Bab and Anis were suspended with ropes. And right before the command to fire, the Bab spoke to the crowd and said,
O wayward generation, had you believed in me, every one of you would have followed the example of this youth, Anis, who stood in rank above most of you, and willingly would have sacrificed himself in my path. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you.
And then the replacement commander gave the command to fire.
Regiment 1, ready, fire! Regiment 2, ready, fire! Regiment 3, ready, fire!
As soon as the shots were fired, a severe wind swept the whole city. A thick whirlwind of dust blocked out the light from the sun and continued until night. The bodies were dumped by a moat outside the city, and soldiers were sent to guard them throughout the night. The next morning, the Russian consul of Tabriz came with an artist and demanded that a portrait be made of the Bab. It was a faithful portrait. Not a bullet struck his forehead, cheeks, or lips, and a smile seemed to be lingering upon his face. But his body had been mutilated, and you could tell the remains of his companion's arms and face, as they seemed to be holding him in his embrace. Indeed, I will never forget it. I was there that day in Tabriz.
Tears flow like rain at night. That night they took his life, and people gathered round to see that he really died. The stars fell and the angels wept. The earth opened up her side. With 750 guns, and on his face a smile, and how they tried to conquer, but they could not understand, and how their hearts were blinded, for he was more than man. He was more than man. The shots were fired, and when the smoke cleared, none could believe their eyes. For standing there, unscathed and unhurt, was the Bab's companion alive. The Bab himself had vanished and gone. A frenzied search began, and still there were few to accept or believe that he was more than a man. And how they tried to conquer, but they could not understand, and how their hearts were blinded, for he was more than man, for he was more than man. Shine on your light into the darkest night. Make all these ghosts take flight with your love. The second time that the shots were fired, darkness obscured the sun. Their bodies shattered and fell to the ground, and were blended
long imprisonment, the Bab had requested and been denied even a candle. But the attempt to deny him light could not endure. Today, at the shrine of the Bab's resting place illumines all of God's holy mountain, Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel. In 1852, 2 years after the Bab's execution in Tehran, one of the most courageous supporters of the Bab, a nobleman named Mirza Hussein Ali, was arrested. He was tortured and cast into a subterranean dungeon known as the Black Pit. While in prison, through the foul air, filth, and pitch-black darkness came the first intimations of a divine revelation within him. He later described the sensation of receiving his revelation. the breezes of the all-glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between heaven and earth. When he was finally released and banished to Baghdad, he began to revive the dispirited followers of the Bab. In 1863, he publicly declared that he was the promised one of whom the Bab had spoken. He took the name Baha'u'llah, meaning glory of God, and his followers became known as the Baha'is. The Bab's prophecies had been fulfilled.